April 23, 1996. Sotheby's York Avenue Salesrooms, New York. The first session begins at 7:30 in the evening. Outside the building, people have been lining up since before noon. Inside, more than 1,500 registered bidders hold catalog numbers. They have come from 19 countries. Sotheby's issued 104,611 copies of the sale catalog, a 583-page glossy hardcover priced at $90, a paperback edition at $45. Both versions sold out before the auction began. The catalog itself, sales 6,834, became a collectible. The official title on the cover, The Estate of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. The pre-sale estimate was $4.6 million. 4 days, 9 sessions, 1,301 lots containing 5,914 individual items: furniture, silver, clothing, jewelry, books, photographs, personal objects accumulated across 64 years of living. Sotheby's anticipated strong bidding. What they got was something categorically different. By the time the final session ended on April 26th, the total hammer price stood at $34,457,470, 7.5 times the estimate. Not one lot went unsold. Newsweek's Jerry Adler, writing the following week, named what had happened without softening it. Many obscure Onassis belongings, tinged with the Kennedy mystique, were bid up more than 35,000% of their appraised values. The frenzy to own a piece of the legendary recluse's celebrity turned the bidding into a commentary on conspicuous consumption and the vacuity of popular culture. USA Today called it Camelot for sale. That framing caught the spectacle. It missed the logic underneath. The public came to own a piece of Jackie Kennedy, the image specifically, the First Lady in the pillbox hat, the widow in the black veil, the icon in the oversized sunglasses who moved through New York in the 1970s and 1980s as if privacy were something she could manufacture through will alone. They weren't wrong that her belongings carried that image. They were paying for proximity to a mythology that had accumulated for 33 years since Dallas. And Sotheby's gave them the infrastructure to do it at scale. The New York Times reported that fashion jewelry as a category sold at 45 times the top estimate, $2.45 million across 2 auction days. The fashion jewelry premium was the highest of any category in the entire sale. The most ordinary objects, touching the most famous image, commanded the most extreme prices. A triple-strand necklace of simulated glass pearls became the clearest proof of that logic. 139 European glass beads on a silver Art Deco clasp set with rhinestones. Jackie had purchased the necklace at Bergdorf Goodman sometime in the 1950s for approximately $35. The pre-sale estimate at Sotheby's was $500 to $700. The Franklin Mint's owners, Stuart and Linda Resnick, paid $211,500 for it. The Smithsonian Institution holds a collection record for the necklace and describes it simply as the highest-selling piece in Sotheby's 1996 auction of items from Mrs. Kennedy's estate. The necklace had been made famous partly because JFK Jr. was photographed as a toddler, tugging on it, while Jackie held him in the White House. What Sotheby's auctioned for $211,500 wasn't really a necklace. It was that photograph. It was that afternoon. The Resnicks understood this clearly enough. They subsequently had the 139 pearls analyzed, matched their creamy color exactly, and produced Franklin Mint reproductions for $195 a strand. Everything else sold at similar premiums of association. JFK's McGregor golf clubs, $772,500, purchased by Arnold Schwarzenegger. The oak rocking chair from the Oval Office, Lot 56, $442,500. JFK's walnut humidor, Lot 57, $574,500. A Louis XV writing desk. The desk on which Kennedy signed the 1963 Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, sold for $1,432,500 against a pre-sale estimate of $20,000 to $30,000. A Wall Street Journal reporter noted at the time that a footstool in the sale commanded an extraordinary bid, partly because the provenance included a detail that Caroline had used it as a child to reach a window. That single domestic detail drove the price. Caroline's childhood rocking horse from the White House nursery sold for $85,000. The highest single lot was Aristotle Onassis's engagement ring, a 40.42-carat Lesotho 3 Marquise diamond, one of the largest gem-quality stones in the world at the time of its cutting. Anthony J.F. O'Reilly, then chairman of H.J. Heinz, paid $2,587,500 for it on behalf of his wife. Jackie had worn the ring rarely during the Onassis marriage. It spent most of those years in a bank vault, and she was only occasionally photographed with it. That ring sold $2,587,500. But the ring John Kennedy had proposed with in 1953 wasn't in the sale. Not the diamond and emerald Toi et Moi, not the redesigned version Jackie had worn through the White House and afterward. That ring wasn't a Sotheby's lot. And that absence between what was offered and what wasn't is where this story actually begins. Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg served as co-executor of her mother's estate, alongside Maurice Templesman, Jackie's longtime companion, and attorney Alexander Forger. The executors approached both Sotheby's and Christie's before choosing Sotheby's for the sale. Caroline and her brother John Jr. were directly involved in the decision to put their mother's belongings up for auction. Whether Caroline personally drew the line between what would be sold and what wouldn't, as distinct from decisions shaped by Jackie's will, institutional donations, and legal estate processes, isn't confirmed in any available document or interview. What is documented is the pattern of what went in and what stayed out. That pattern is worth following carefully. In the spring of 1961, Jacqueline Kennedy was 31 years old, roughly 100 days into her life as First Lady. She traveled to London with her sister Lee Radziwill and walked into Wartsky, an antique dealer on Regent Street, known for 18th and 19th century jewelry. She found a brooch, a diamond sunburst design, stones set in silver and gold, dating from the 19th century. Rays of diamonds extending outward from a central cluster. The kind of piece that doesn't apologize for itself. To pay for it, she gave up other things. A sapphire and diamond bracelet from Van Cleef & Arpels was part of the trade. Several other pieces went too. And the diamond leaf brooches she had received as wedding gifts from Ambassador Joseph Kennedy and Rose Kennedy. Formal family jewelry, given to mark the formal occasion of the marriage. Those were sold to help fund the purchase. This isn't a minor transaction. Jackie wasn't trading costume jewelry. She was exchanging pieces with specific Kennedy family provenance, pieces that had been gifts at a ceremony attended by 750 people, for a 19th century antique from a London shop that had no connection to any of them. She wanted it. She paid for it by dismantling other things. The brooch wasn't a Van Cleef & Arpels piece, despite what is sometimes reported. Van Cleef & Arpels made the jewelry Jackie traded away to acquire it. The distinction matters when trying to understand what the object meant to her. It was explicitly not a piece she received. It was a piece she chose. Jackie debuted the brooch publicly in April 1962 at the White House state visit of the Shah of Iran and Empress Farah Diba. The following month, on May 11, 1962, she wore it in her hair at a state dinner honoring French Minister of Culture André Malraux. A photograph, now in the National Archives, dated April 30, 1963, shows her wearing it at the state visit of the Luxembourgish royal family, again pinned into her hair above the chignon, the starburst of diamonds visible against the dark sweep. She wore it throughout the decades that followed. A photograph from the 1980s reportedly shows her wearing it at Le Cirque restaurant in Paris. The brooch accompanied her from the height of her public power into her private, later life. It was a piece she had chosen under no social obligation, at real cost, in the first months of a role that would define the rest of her existence. Not state-gifted, not ceremonial, not attached to anyone's expectation of what the First Lady should wear. It was hers in a way that very few things in those years could be entirely hers. When Jackie died on May 19, 1994, at her Fifth Avenue apartment, Caroline inherited the sunburst brooch. It wasn't included in the Sotheby's sale. What followed is documented less precisely, and this needs to be said plainly. One jewelry history source reports that Caroline has been seen wearing the brooch at the Kennedy Center Honors in 2009 and 2012, and that when asked about it at a Kennedy Center Honors dinner, she replied, reportedly, "My mother gave it to me." That attribution rests on a single source without a primary interview citation, no date, no journalist's name attached. The 2009 Kennedy Center Honors Ceremony is a confirmed event, the White House East Room reception on December 6th, with honorees Mel Brooks, Dave Brubeck, Grace Bumbry, Robert De Niro, and Bruce Springsteen. Photographs from that evening exist. Whether the brooch is visible in those photographs, this research can't confirm with certainty. The 2012 appearance is even less specifically documented. What can be confirmed? The brooch was inherited. It wasn't sold. A woman described by her biographers as always introverted, someone who valued her privacy and resented the press, has apparently, on the documented occasions when she has brought this piece out, brought it to events named after her father. Whether that is deliberate or coincidental, the pattern is the same. The brooch acquired at the cost of Kennedy family gifts, worn through the most watched years of her mother's public life, kept by the daughter who won't sell it, apparently worn at ceremonies dedicated to her father's legacy. The engagement ring is more precisely documented, and its history is more revealing in proportion to that precision. In June 1953, Senator Kennedy proposed to Jacqueline Bouvier. The ring was selected not by Jack, but by his father, Joseph Kennedy, at the Van Cleef & Arpels boutique on Fifth Avenue. Helene Arpels, wife of Louis Arpels and a family friend, helped Joseph make the selection. After reviewing the available pieces, Joseph Kennedy reportedly asked for his selections to be shipped to Hyannisport without asking the price. The design was a toi et moi, you and me in French, in which two stones are set side by side, equal in elevation, their proximity the central statement of the piece. One 2.88-carat emerald-cut diamond, one 2.84-carat Colombian emerald. Tapered baguette diamonds along a band of platinum and yellow gold, valued at the time at over $1 million. When the engagement was publicly announced, Jackie told reporters she didn't yet have a ring, that she and Jack had looked at dozens of possibilities without settling on one. The ring that eventually appeared on her finger had been chosen, in her absence, by a man she was about to acquire as a father-in-law, with help from a jeweler who was also a family friend. That triangulated acquisition, efficient, Kennedy, present before Jackie had fully approved, is itself a small portrait of how the family operated around her. They married September 12, 1953, at St. Mary's Church in Newport, Rhode Island. More than 750 guests inside. The ring was on her finger through all of it. It stayed there for 9 years before she changed it. In 1962, with the Kennedy White House at the height of its influence and international visibility, Jackie returned the ring to Van Cleef & Arpels to be reset. The original tapered baguette diamonds along the band were replaced with marquise-cut diamonds, 1.46 carats total, arranged in a laurel wreath pattern beneath and around the 2 center stones. Round, brilliant-cut diamonds, totaling 0.66 carats, were added along the front half of the band. The 2 center stones, the diamond and the emerald, the original Toi et moi, the You and Me from 1953, weren't touched. The mechanics of the redesign deserve attention. Jackie didn't change what the ring said. She changed how loudly it said it. The original baguettes were architectural and restrained. Mid-century understatement, appropriate to a senator's engagement, to 1953. The marquise and round-cut editions were more formal, more evidently opulent, more consistent with what the First Lady's jewelry needed to communicate at state dinners and diplomatic receptions. She kept the symbolic core intact, 2 equal stones, side by side, and dressed it for the role she was living. The redesign has been read as reflecting Jackie's growing self-confidence personally, and her family's expanding role on the world stage. That reading is accurate as far as it goes. But there's something more specific in the decision. She preserved the 2 stones JFK's father had chosen and JFK had given. The private foundation of the ring was untouched. The public surface was upgraded. The JFK Presidential Library's press release for the 2003 50th anniversary wedding exhibition confirmed the ring and its history precisely. Purchased in the summer of 1953, the Van Cleef & Arpels engagement ring John F. Kennedy presented to Jacqueline Bouvier consisted of one 2.88-carat diamond mounted next to a 2.84-carat emerald-cut emerald with tapered baguettes. In 1962, the ring was reset to include round diamonds totaling 0.66 carats and marquise diamonds totaling 1.46 carats. The ring was among the items displayed in that anniversary exhibition. It's part of the Kennedy Library's permanent collection, appearing in special exhibitions. Its exact path from Jackie's estate to the library, whether Caroline donated it, whether Jackie's own archival intentions directed it there, whether the estate administration formalized the transfer, isn't confirmed in available records. Jackie had always placed her White House materials at the library as a matter of deliberate stewardship. Her formal state wardrobe is archived there. The ring's presence in the library may be continuous with that intention, rather than a separate act by Caroline. What is documented without ambiguity, the ring wasn't sold at Sotheby's in 1996. The Onassis diamond, the ring from the second marriage, the grander stone, the piece that spent most of its years in a bank vault, sold for $2,587,500. The Kennedy ring, by any measure the more historically significant object, is in a library in Boston, accessible to anyone who visits, owned by no one. Not purchasable, not privately held, permanently public, in the most controlled sense. The contrast between those 2 rings isn't a subtle argument. It's the argument. Aristotle Onassis's ring went to the highest bidder in April 1996. John Kennedy's ring went to the institution that bears his name. The difference in destination maps precisely onto the difference in what each marriage meant within the private life of the woman who wore them both. The third piece requires the most careful framing, because the evidence is thinnest. The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library's official 2003 press release for the 50th anniversary wedding exhibition describes the jewelry Jackie wore at St. Mary's Church on September 12, 1953. Among the items listed, a diamond bracelet the groom had presented to her the evening before the wedding. That sentence comes from the library's own documentation, drawn from the family archive. A diamond bracelet, given by JFK. Not at the altar. The evening before, at the rehearsal dinner held at Newport on September 11th, the night when Senator Kennedy presented his 14 ushers with Brooks Brothers umbrellas engraved with their initials and the wedding date. A private dinner, with family and close friends, 12 hours before the ceremony that more than 750 guests would witness. Secondary sources describe the bracelet in more detail, alternating diamonds and pearls, a wire and rope frame design, specific stone counts. Those descriptions come from jewelry historians working from photographs and retrospective accounts, and that level of specific description isn't confirmed by the JFK Library's contemporaneous documentation. The library says, diamond bracelet. That is what can be stated with confidence. The bracelet existed. JFK gave it to Jackie the night before they were married. She wore it the next day. What happened to it after Jackie's death isn't a matter of public record. Whether it was among the items not offered at Sotheby's, retained in Caroline's possession, or directed elsewhere through the estate, there is no document or statement in available research that confirms any of that. The three-piece narrative around which this video is organized, the brooch, the ring, the bracelet, originated in a viewer comment on a previous video on this channel. Not in an archive, not in a published biography, and not in anything Caroline Kennedy has ever said publicly. That needs to be stated plainly, because the integrity of the argument depends on distinguishing between what is documented and what is inferred. What can be said about the bracelet is narrower, but not insignificant. It was given privately, the night before a marriage that became one of the most observed relationships in American political history. It predates every photograph of Jackie as First Lady. It predates the White House, the state dinners, the pink suit, everything that came to define the public image. The bracelet, if it can be located in the record at all, belongs to the moment just before the public life began. Objects from that moment are the hardest to trace. By definition, they left no public record beyond the act of giving. The argument the available evidence supports, stated clearly and with the acknowledgement it requires, runs as follows. 3 objects weren't sold at the April 1996 Sotheby's auction. A 19th-century diamond sunburst brooch, acquired by Jackie in 1961 and inherited by Caroline after Jackie's death. The Van Cleef & Arpels Toi et Moi engagement ring from JFK, now permanently held at the Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston. And, with significantly less certainty, a diamond bracelet that JFK gave to Jacqueline Bouvier the evening before their September 1953 wedding, whose current location isn't documented in publicly available records. These 3 objects share a quality that distinguishes them from the 5,914 items that did go under the hammer. Each is tied specifically to the relationship between Jackie and JFK, to the private interior of a marriage that took place at the center of American public life for less than 3 years before it was ended in Dallas. But the inference has to survive a harder test than that, because sentiment alone doesn't explain the pattern. Caroline's own childhood rocking horse sold for $85,000. A diamond ring JFK had given Jackie as a separate personal gift sold for $415,000. The pearl necklace associated with JFK Jr. as a toddler sold for $211,500. Objects intimately connected to the Kennedy family, to Caroline's own childhood, to private moments between Jackie and her children, those were in the sale. So the line wasn't simply drawn between sentimental and not sentimental. What distinguished the sold pieces from the kept ones is more specific, if the inference holds. The sold pieces were all recognizable. They carried the public image. The pearls were famous because of the photograph. The rocking chair was famous because of the Oval Office. Even the kunzite ring that sold for $415,000 was a piece the public could attach to the mythology of the Kennedy marriage without needing to know its private history. The items that commanded the highest premiums, fashion jewelry at 45 times the top estimate, ordinary objects bid up 35,000% of appraised value, were items the public already knew or could immediately imagine on her. The brooch, the engagement ring, and the bracelet aren't famous in that sense. The pearl necklace is famous. The brooch isn't. The Onassis diamond is famous. The Toi et Moi engagement ring is known only to people who have researched it. The wedding bracelet is barely documented at all. These are pieces whose meaning requires knowing the story. The specific story of a London antique shop, a Fifth Avenue boutique, a rehearsal dinner in Newport. Without the story, they are just jewelry. Caroline knows the story. No one else needed to. It would be too clean to say that Caroline made a conscious, deliberate decision to keep these three pieces as a curated emotional statement. That may be exactly what she did. It may also be that the engagement ring was always going to the library, consistent with Jackie's own archival intentions, that the brooch was simply left to her in the will, that the bracelet's absence from the sale records is a gap in documentation rather than an act of retention. Estate administration isn't always the expression of a single person's emotional priorities. What isn't clean is the pattern itself. Aristotle Onassis's ring sold. John Kennedy's ring didn't. The jewelry connected to the second marriage went to the highest bidder. The jewelry connected to the first marriage went to an archive named for the man who gave it. That is an inference. That is a sequence of documented events. Jerry Adler in Newsweek called the bidding a commentary on conspicuous consumption and the vacuity of popular culture. That framing has always missed something about Jackie specifically, which is that she was a legendary recluse precisely because she had built, with extraordinary effort and precision, a wall between the public self and the private one. She gave no substantial personal interviews during her White House years. She never wrote a memoir. She managed, across 3 decades of being among the most scrutinized people in the world, to keep the actual texture of her private life almost entirely private. Her White House wardrobe was archived at the Kennedy Library. She chose to place it in institutional hands rather than private ones. Her engagement ring ended up in the same place. The auction sold the public Jackie. Every dollar of the $34.5 million went toward pieces of the image. The furniture of her public rooms, the jewelry of her state occasions, the objects that people recognized because they had seen photographs of them. The public bought what it already thought it owned, proximity to a mythology they had been watching for 30 years. The brooch, the ring, and the bracelet, to the extent the argument holds, represent something else. They are the objects of the marriage, not the mythology. The mythology was built on top of that marriage and then outlasted it by 6 decades. But the marriage itself was a quieter thing. A senator and a young woman from Newport. A ring chosen by a father-in-law who didn't ask the price. A brooch bought on a London trip by trading away formal gifts. A bracelet given privately the night before everything became public. Caroline sold the image. She kept the marriage. The Sotheby's auction catalog. Sale 6,834. 583 pages, $90 hardcover. Is available at the Internet Archive. You can read every lot number, every presale estimate, every hammer price across 4 days and 9 sessions. It's a complete record of what 5,914 items were worth to people who had decided they needed proximity to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. The catalog does not contain the sunburst brooch acquired at a London antique shop in 1961, the piece Jackie chose by giving up the Kennedy family's gifts to finance it. It does not contain the Toi et Moi engagement ring, with its 2.88-carat diamond and its 2.84-carat emerald at the center, redesigned in 1962 to carry the weight of the White House while preserving the two original stones unchanged. And it does not appear to contain whatever remains of the diamond bracelet presented to Jacqueline Bouvier at a rehearsal dinner in Newport on the evening of September 11, 1953, 12 hours before the wedding. The catalog is the public record. The three pieces are the private one. There is one more contrast worth noting. Aristotle Onassis's 40.42-carat diamond, by any standard, one of the most magnificent pieces of jewelry given to any woman in the 20th century, a ring so large it spent most of its years in a vault, sold for $2.587 million at Sotheby's in April 1996. The Kennedy engagement ring, which had been on Jackie's hand through the courtship and the wedding and the White House and the decades after, is in a library in Boston. Not purchasable, not privately held, accessible to anyone who walks through the door. What Aristotle Onassis gave Jackie went to the highest bidder. What John Kennedy gave her went to an institution named for him, and, at least in the case of the brooch, to their daughter. That isn't a sentimental reading. That is what the records show. $34 million for the things the public could buy. 3 pieces for the daughter who already owned them in the only way that mattered. The auction told you who Jackie was to America. The 3 items Caroline kept told you who Jackie was at home. If you want more stories where objects become evidence, where what someone chose not to sell tells you more than anything that went under the hammer, subscribe. There's more here.